Summer vacation had finally arrived, and Jake found himself alone at home. His mother, Sarah, had recently returned from spending a few days at her sister's, but she had left almost immediately for a meeting with a friend. His father had been away on a 2-month business trip for a week now. At 18, as a college student, Jake was looking forward to spending this time in a house that was entirely at his disposal. As soon as his mother's car disappeared from the driveway, he locked the front door and, wasting no time, undressed. Gathering his usual items, tissues and liquid soap, he prepared for what promised to be a long and enjoyable activity. Time flew by unnoticed. Before Jake knew it, more than 4 hours had passed. Usually, his mother would stay out much longer when meeting with her friend, but this time it seemed their conversation had been brief. Engrossed in what he was watching, and with headphones that completely blocked out external sounds, Jake didn't notice the front door opening quietly. Suddenly, his mother's voice, filled with shock and bewilderment, pierced through. "Oh my God, Jake, what are you doing? Stop that immediately." Jake froze, overwhelmed by a wave of embarrassment, while his mother rushed out of his room. Her sudden appearance caught him off guard, and it took him a moment to realize what had happened. But as reality slowly sank in, he was faced with the question: what to do next? How to explain this to her? After a few moments that felt like an eternity, Jake gathered the courage to go to his mother. He found her in the living room, her face a mix of disappointment and embarrassment. "I'm really sorry, Mom," he mumbled. "I didn't expect you to come back so early. I promise it won't happen again." His mother didn't say a word. She just looked at him, dejected and upset, and then silently headed to the kitchen. They spent the rest of the evening in tense silence, sipping tea and avoiding each other's gaze. The air was filled with awkwardness, and Jake could only wish for this day to end quickly. Despite all the discomfort, the desire to finish what he had started didn't leave him. After dinner, he returned to his room, leaving the door slightly ajar to hear when his mother finished washing the dishes. Jake was sure he had thought of everything, but his mother was one step ahead. She deliberately turned the water on full blast, drowning out the sound of her footsteps, and quietly approached his room. He was too engrossed to notice her approach until he heard her soft voice behind him. "It's okay, Jake. Just be quiet. Everything is fine." Jake almost jumped out of his skin, frantically trying to close the browser tabs on his screen. His mother entered the room, her gaze drawn to the adult materials still visible on the monitor. "I just wanted to say that I shouldn't have yelled at you earlier today," she said, her voice slightly trembling. "At your age, it's normal, I understand." "Mom, I'm so sorry," Jake began, but she interrupted him. "Wait, I just want to know how often you do this?" Embarrassed but feeling he needed to be honest, Jake replied, "Well, every day, Mom. Sometimes several times." "Several times?" she insisted. 3 or 4 times, maybe." She nodded, absorbing this information. "Okay, I just want you to know that I understand. You're young and your body has needs. Don't be embarrassed around me. If you enjoy it, I don't want to stop you, but I can't go out 3 or 4 times every day so you can have privacy. Just do what you need to and ignore me. Okay?" Before Jake could respond, she silently turned around and left the room, leaving him in complete bewilderment. How could such a conversation even happen? It all seemed unbelievable, as if it were happening in some parallel world. A few days later, over dinner, his mother casually asked, "Jake, did you take care of yourself today?" Jake almost choked on his food. "Mom, why?" "Jake, we agreed if you need to. Don't be embarrassed around me." "It's okay," she gently reminded him. Yes, I remember," he mumbled, still feeling the awkwardness of this strange new reality. "Yes, of course, son. No worries. Let's just finish dinner." Jake couldn't believe this was actually happening. It felt like he had ended up in an alternate universe. After dinner, he went to his room, trying to make sense of this unusual situation. A few minutes later, His mother appeared in the doorway, dressed in her usual housecoat. "Well, put on one of your videos," she said casually. "Mom, please no," Jake pleaded, feeling his cheeks flush with heat. "No, Jake, we need to get past this awkwardness," she asserted. "Let's watch that video we accidentally started together yesterday. What was it called again?" Reluctantly, Jake typed in the search words and found the video they had accidentally started watching yesterday. "Turn up the volume," his mother demanded, and he obediently complied. She stood beside him, watching the screen with unexpected interest. Their eyes met for a moment, and Jake quickly looked away, trying to focus on what was happening in the video. "Come on, Jake," his mother encouraged. "Do what you usually do." She left the room for a moment, then returned, bringing a chair that she placed next to his. They sat in silence, continuing to watch the video. After a few minutes, his mother spoke again. "Okay, son, you can do this whenever you want. Don't worry about me." The next morning, Jake woke up with a feeling of strange excitement and concern. The recent events had drastically changed their relationship, and he wasn't sure how to navigate this new reality. He headed to the kitchen, where his mother was already preparing breakfast. She greeted him with a friendly smile, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. "Good morning, Jake. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thanks," he replied, still feeling a slight awkwardness. "Do you like the new headphones?" his mother asked with a satisfied expression. "I'm glad you like them. I thought they might come in handy." They had breakfast in peaceful silence, and the tension of the past few days seemed to dissipate. When Jake finished his coffee, his mother cleared her throat to get his attention. "Jake, I thought we should establish some rules regarding our new agreement." Jake's face instantly flushed, but he nodded, indicating he was ready to listen. "First, let's keep this between us. Your father doesn't need to know about our little understanding." "Yes, I agree," Jake quickly replied, relieved that they were on the same page. "Second, if you're going to do this in the living room, let me know in advance. I don't want to catch you off guard again." "Of course, Mom, that's fair," Jake replied, appreciating her practical approach to the situation. And lastly, her voice became softer and gentler. "If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm always here and won't judge." Jake nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude towards her, despite the awkwardness of their new reality. His mother was genuinely trying to be supportive and understanding. In the following days, they found a new rhythm, adapting to their unusual situation. Jake continued his daily activities, but now with a sense of freedom he hadn't had before. His mother, as promised, didn't make him feel ashamed or awkward about his habits, and this brought a lightness to their relationship that wasn't there before. One evening, about a week after their first conversation, Jake settled in the living room and enjoyed an especially engaging video on the big screen. He had, as promised, warned his mother, so he was at ease and not worried about her sudden appearance. However, to his surprise, she approached the couch with a glass of wine in her hand and asked, "Do you mind if I join you?" Her tone was casual. Jake tried to hide his excitement, although his heart was pounding, and replied, "Of course, if you want." For a while, they sat in silence, with only the sounds from the screen breaking the peace of the room. Jake noticed his mother's reaction out of the corner of his eye. She was clearly interested in what was happening, occasionally taking a sip of wine and shifting slightly on the couch. "She's quite pretty," his mother commented, pointing to the actress on the screen. "What do you like about her?" Jake hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to answer such a question. "Well, I think I like her confidence and her figure." His mother smiled. "I see. You know, I used to have a figure like that before I had you." Jake looked at her in surprise, struck by her openness. "You still look amazing, Mom," he said, feeling a slight awkwardness at making a compliment in such a setting. She smiled, clearly pleased. "Thank you, Jake. That's very sweet of you." As the video continued, Jake felt himself becoming more aroused, possibly due to his mother's presence. He squirmed uncomfortably, trying to hide his reaction. "Jake, dear, it's all right," his mother said, noticing his discomfort. "Remember what I said. Don't be embarrassed around me. If you need to take care of yourself, do it." Jake froze, unsure if he had understood her correctly. "Here and now?" he asked. She nodded, her expression reassuring. "If you want, I don't mind. In fact," she hesitated, then continued, "I could give you some tips if you want." Jake's mind spun at her suggestion. This was beyond anything he could have imagined when they started this new agreement. Part of him wanted to run to his room out of embarrassment, but another part, stronger, was intrigued by her offer. Slowly and uncertainly, he nodded. "Okay," he whispered, his voice barely audible. His mother set her glass of wine down and turned to face him. "Okay, first relax. You're too tense. Take a deep breath." Jake did as she said, feeling some of the tension leave his body. "Good," she continued. "Now start slowly. Don't rush." Following her guidance, Jake began to pleasure himself, all the while acutely aware of her presence beside him. This was surreal. His mother was coaching him in this intensely personal act, but he couldn't deny the excitement it brought. As he continued, his mother offered more advice, her voice soft and encouraging. "That's it, Jake. Pay attention to what feels good. Vary your rhythm." She took his wrist and began to set the pace of his movements. Her words combined with her actions, and the visual stimulation from the TV and the novelty of the situation quickly brought him to the edge. "Mom, I'm close," he whispered. "It's okay, dear. Let go. Don't hold back," she whispered. With a muffled groan, Jake reached his climax, waves of pleasure washing over him. When he came to his senses, he felt a mix of embarrassment and exhilaration. His mother handed him a box of tissues, a small smile on her face. "Feeling better?" Jake nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "Yes, thank you, Mom." She patted his knee gently. "You're welcome, Jake. I'm glad I could help. Now, why don't you go clean up while I prepare dinner for us?" As Jake headed to the bathroom, his thoughts were spinning. What had just happened? How had they gone from awkward conversations to this? And more importantly, where would they go from here? Over the next few weeks, their unusual agreement continued to develop. His mother became more involved in his activities, offering advice and sometimes even joining him in watching videos. She never participated directly, but her presence and guidance added an exciting new dimension to his experiences. One day, during a quiet afternoon, they sat together on the couch. His mother suddenly turned to Jake, her expression serious. "Jake, we need to discuss something important," she said softly. Jake felt his heart quicken. The thought crossed his mind that she might have changed her mind about their agreement. "What do you want to talk about, Mom?" he asked cautiously. She took a deep breath before continuing. "I want you to understand. What is happening between us is not something ordinary. Most mothers and sons do not behave this way." Jake silently nodded, feeling a sense of unease growing inside him. "Do you want to stop this?" he asked anxiously. But her response surprised him. His mother shook her head. "No, it's not about that. I just want you to be aware that this is something special, personal. It doesn't change the essence of our relationship. I remain your mother and will always love you as my son. This is just an unusual form of support at this stage of your life." Her words brought him a sense of both relief and confusion. "I understand, Mom. I also love you and greatly appreciate your support. But why did you agree to this? Most mothers would never accept something like this." She paused for a moment, considering her response. "Probably because I remember how complicated and confusing such feelings can be at your age. In my time, I didn't have someone who could help me figure this out, and I made some mistakes. I want better for you. I want you to feel confident in your sexuality, without the shame and secrets that I once had." These sincere words deeply touched him. "Thank you, Mom. This really means a lot to me." She smiled, hugging him. "You're welcome, dear. And remember, if you ever want to talk, About anything. I'm always here and won't judge. Thanks, Mom. How about we spend the evening quietly? I heard there's a new nature documentary on Netflix. When they settled on the couch to watch the documentary, Jake felt a surge of respect for his mother. Despite the unusual nature of their relationship, he understood that her intentions came from love and a desire to protect him. A few weeks passed, and before he knew it, it was time for his father to return from his trip. Both Jake and his mother knew that their special agreement had to change with his return. The evening before his father's arrival, his mother entered his room. "Jake, we need to talk." He put down his book and looked at her curiously. "Of course, Mom. What's up?" She sat on the edge of his bed, her gaze focused. "Tomorrow your father is coming back, and everything has to go back to normal. I just want to know how you feel about this." Jake thought about her question. "I'll manage, Mom. Of course, I'll miss our special agreement, but I understand that with Dad's return, it's no longer possible." His mother, noticing his calmness, nodded with relief. "I'm glad to hear you understand. And Jake, I want you to know how proud I am of you. Over these few weeks, you've grown noticeably. I hope that what we've been through together has been helpful for you. It helped more than you can imagine." "Thank you for everything, Mom," he sincerely replied. She leaned in and gently kissed his forehead, a gesture she hadn't repeated since he was a child. "You're welcome, dear. And remember, even if this aspect of our relationship has ended, I'm always here if you need to talk." As she stood up to leave, Jake called out, "Mom!" She turned around. "Yes, Jake. I love you." Her face softened into a warm smile. "I love you too, dear. Always." The next day, his father returned, and the dynamics of their household changed again. But something had changed between his mother and Jake. They shared a secret, a bond that went beyond ordinary mother-son relationships. In the years that followed, Jake often reflected on that summer. Although some might consider what happened inappropriate, for him it was a time of growth, understanding, and unconditional love. The unconventional approach his mother took gave him confidence and self-awareness that many of his peers lacked. Navigating relationships and his sexuality in college and beyond, Jake carried with him the lessons his mother had taught him. Her openness and acceptance shaped him in ways he was only beginning to understand. Their relationship remained close, although they never spoke directly about that summer again. It was their secret, a chapter in their lives that brought them closer together, teaching them invaluable lessons about love, trust, and self-acceptance. Looking back, Jake realized that what might have seemed unusual to others was, for them, a beautiful expression of maternal love and filial trust. It was a summer that changed everything, but changed nothing.